Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Brent Berenson, and I will be the moderator for our presentation. I'm the director of Fluor's Office of Technology, which focuses on using science and innovative engineering technology to build a better world. Our engineers, designers, and experts, our people, are the core of our success. Today's webinar is entitled Net Zero Journey. Fluor first measured our greenhouse gas emissions in 2006, and our efforts to reduce emissions since then have been significant. The Net Zero 2023 commitment is the next step in our sustainability journey and demonstrates our leadership in the industry. Our journey can guide other companies that have committed or plan to commit to net zero target. We have three speakers today. First, I'd like to introduce Nancy Kralik. Nancy has over 40 years of experience in developing and implementation of health, safety, environmental, and sustainability practices globally. Approximately half of those years have been with Fluor. She leads the corporate sustainability team and serves as the chair of Fluor's executive level sustainability committee. Nancy also serves as a nonprofit counsel and 2 university advisory boards. In her spare time, Nancy enjoys ballroom dancing, reading, traveling, and attending musicals and plays with friends. Joining Nancy is Lucy Brady. Lucy received her Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering from Ukrainian State Chemical Technology University and has spent most of her career at Fluor. She has 12 years of process engineering experience in chemical, refinery, and power plants that include conceptual and detailed design, modification of the existing facilities, design of utilities, and off-site systems. Lucy has also spent 3 years of her career as part of the global sustainability team, providing direction to the corporation on existing and emerging issues of prime importance in the areas of sustainability and environmental social government. When she's not working, Lucy spends her time with her 1-year-old twin boys. Our third speaker, Hillary Sellers, will set the stage for today's webinar by delivering the health, safety, and environmental topic. Hillary is currently a director of corporate development. She will be joining the sustainability team in August as global sustainability director. Based in Seattle, Washington, Hillary is approaching her 20-year anniversary with Fluor this summer. She's experienced in corporate strategy, market intelligence, and strategic planning, as well as having a background in business development support, marketing, and communications. Hillary received a degree in communications from Washington State University and has incorporated communications into each role she's held at Fluor over the years. When she's not working, Hillary is spending time with her 6 and 10-year-old daughters. Fluor has a very strong safety-driven culture, and as such, it is customary for us to start our meetings with a brief HSE topic. Hillary, if you don't mind, please unmute your line and share the HSE topic with us.
Thank you for that introduction, Brent. For today's HSE topic, we will be looking at Fluor's Sustainability Action Screening Tool and Implementation Tracking Register, a proprietary tool designed to identify high-value sustainability options that can be implemented on a project. By providing project-specific answers to approximately 100 questions related to engineering, construction, including supply chain and stakeholder relations, and commissioning activities, Fluor, in collaboration with our clients, is able to screen an extensive catalog of sustainability actions, and from that, identify a tailored list of potential actions that are best aligned with our client's goals and best suited for application on the project. The user of the tool is first asked to prioritize the sustainability objective for the project, whether it has an environmental, social, or economic objective, or a combination of 2 or 3 of those objectives. The user then provides project conditions through a questionnaire. The questions range from whether it's a schedule or cost-driven project, to project scope, to site location, to the type of contract. The resulting prioritized list provides feedback to project personnel so that appropriate and high-value sustainability actions and initiatives can be chosen for their project. The selected actions and initiatives are then populated in the tracking register. Each action in the catalog describes the sustainability impact, whether there is a significant positive influence on conventional project performance criteria, such as safety and quality, It describes ease of implementation, project conditions that leverage benefits from the action, potential output metrics, barriers to implementation, and references. In closing, I would like to share that the tool is available for use with all of Fluor's clients on all of our projects. Turning to today's agenda, we will be discussing an overview of Fluor's Net Zero 2023 commitment, challenges that we've encountered or expect we could encounter, and ways to mitigate those challenges, our plan and our actions toward achieving net zero, and we will share takeaways. I'm going to turn to Nancy Kralik to provide an overview of our Net Zero 2023 commitment.
Thank you, Hillary. Our main topic today is Net Zero 2023, Fluor's commitment to eliminate its Scopes 1 and 2 operational greenhouse gas emissions by the end of 2023. This graphic demonstrates the composition of the three scopes that constitute a greenhouse gas inventory aligned with the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. Scope 1 includes all direct emissions, like fuel used in mobile and stationary equipment and fleet. Scope 2 is emissions from purchased electricity and steam. Scope 3 includes indirect emissions in the value chain. All of Fluor's offices, including Stork's offices, are included in the commitment. Project offices located at construction sites are not included in the commitment, as these offices fall outside of Fluor's operational control and are included in the client's inventory. Fabrication yards are included in Scope 3 as our supply chain emissions rather than in this commitment. Why did Fluor make this commitment? Fluor's strategy consists of 4 priorities designed to drive growth and create value for our stakeholders. Sustainability is encapsulated in the priority to foster a high-performance culture with purpose. Leadership in managing greenhouse gas emissions is sought by investors, employees, and the general public. Eliminating our Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emissions by the end of next year demonstrates to existing and potential clients and stakeholders that our environmental stewardship isn't just something we say, but something we put into action. This commitment truly differentiates us from the competition, most of whom have set their emission reduction goals for 2030 and 2040. In addition, employees want to work at a company that acknowledges and communicates the importance of sustainability. You care about the planet you are leaving for your children and grandchildren, and Fluor does too. I'm going to take you through the plan that we created, and that it could serve as a primer for other companies seeking to attain net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, Fluor and its sustainability team are available to assist other teams in creating and implementing a net zero plan. We had several significant challenges that we needed to address. One of our biggest challenges was the tight time frame. We commenced the Net Zero 2023 commitment in February 2021, with achievement less than 3 years later. As we held discussion with our chosen consultant, it became clear that the framework was compressed even more in order to provide sufficient time for the verification to occur. This tight time frame resulted in a staggered planning and implementation process. Instead of planning all aspects of the project and then implementing the plan, we iterated. As we gained experience in addressing net zero, we amended the plan in order to fine-tune implementation. A second challenge involved our Scope 1 and Scope 2 greenhouse gas emission inventory. We needed to confirm the inventory and source of our emissions by determining which entities and offices to include. Due to planned divestitures of divisions of Fluor, the inventory fluctuated, and our process needed to account for those fluctuations. A third challenge deals with documentation of our process and results. The documentation for verification of the commitment was significantly more than we had performed in the past, and we adjusted our process accordingly. A fourth challenge was inability to account for use of renewable energy with the current methodology. We modified our calculation software accordingly. And our last challenge was a concern that our actions would be perceived as greenwashing if we purchased energy attributes and offsets. Energy attribute certificates are a proof of electricity produced by renewable sources. A carbon offset compensates for the emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere as a result of industrial or other human activity. So, in order to address this possible preconception or perception of greenwashing, Fluor has taken a prioritized approach to net zero. We'll achieve net zero emissions in each calendar year beginning in 2023 by a combination of these prioritized strategies. First, we'll reduce our energy consumption through energy reduction initiatives. Then next, we'll buy nuclear energy and renewable energy such as solar or wind bundled with renewable energy attributes, and we'll retain and retire those attributes. Third, we will buy unbundled energy attributes as needed to address the remainder of Scope 2 emissions. And these attributes will be sourced within the same grid region or as close as possible to the Fluor operations to which they are applied. And last, we'll buy and retire offsets to reduce the remainder of Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Both energy attributes and carbon offsets will be purchased from high-quality sources. The newly created Global Sustainability Group took the lead on managing the commitment. We established a core team to plan and oversee activities. The core team consists of participants from 15 disciplines across Fluor's global network. They work with Fluor's offices and align with office managers regarding expectations to reduce emissions. In addition, core team members are involved in energy options, such as energy attributes and offsets, and in creation of the implementation plan. A change management plan was key to assist the team in determining what entities would be impacted by the commitment and how to assist them in addressing the change that the commitment would necessitate. This change management plan is tied to the net zero communications plan. Fluor's goal is to be transparent with all stakeholders and work with Fluor offices to obtain accurate data. We began our communication effort by creating an ideation campaign to solicit office emission reduction ideas from employees. The campaign in the spring of 2021 generated nearly 300 ideas, and you'll hear about those later from Lucy. We created an area on our intranet site dedicated to communicating our progress on the net zero commitment. Central to that area are progress updates that we publish quarterly. These same progress reports are published on Fluor's intranet as well. As an example, in the first quarter of 2022, we reported that we added the historic offices to the commitment, bringing our total locations to 104. We also share our progress in our annual sustainability report and on fluor.com. Beginning in the 2022 reporting year, our progress will be captured on our intranet site and in Fluor's integrated annual report. Our managers play a pivotal role in ensuring that our Fluor family is equipped to make the necessary changes to help Fluor achieve our net zero 2023 commitment. They represent the face and voice of the change to frontline employees. We publish Net Zero 2023 messages for managers twice a year to provide managers with the knowledge and tools they need to be successful change agents. The team created a detailed commitment schedule. As we noted when discussing challenges, the schedule went through a number of edits as the team became more experienced in the process and issues to consider. As you can see from the dark orange bar, We need to complete data collection by the middle of 2023 to allow enough time for the consultant to verify our net zero achievement to meet our early 2024 announcement date. So our net zero 2023 is actually the middle of 2023. If you plan on setting a target, be sure to take into account the verification time. Fluor's Climate Action Plan, or what we call CAP, is the framework for measuring, planning, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The CAP deals with our strategy, our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, boundary conditions, emission reduction steps, and management of our data and the overall process. We'll share the CAP on our internet site later this year. Now Lucy will tell you about the actions in our net zero commitment.
Yes, thank you, Nancy. So we really wanted to be transparent, and we hired a third-party consultant to review our proprietary database, which is called Sustainability Performance Indicator Management System. We also call it SPIMS. This system is used to gather the sources of greenhouse gas emissions, as well as calculate and report the emissions for management and publication. The consultant will also confirm our emission sources and the methodology that we used to calculate the emissions. And finally, they will verify that Fluor has achieved net zero. Given the need to purchase carbon offsets and energy attributes to attain net zero, we also decided to hire an energy advisor. In addition to purchasing energy attributes and offsets, the energy advisor is assisting us in evaluating our options post-2023 and developing a global renewable energy procurement strategy. They will also provide upskilling in some technical areas. So we're reducing our emissions for both Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions in a cost-effective approach. We mentioned earlier that we collected almost 300 emission reduction ideas. Using those ideas and additional ones provided from other sources, the office teams created their wish list using a reporting framework created by one of our team members. Our office teams proposed 65 initiatives to address Scope 2, they're shown in the right in blue, and 20 to address Scope 1 emissions, they're shown on the left in green here. For Fluor, Scope 2 includes mainly electricity, and Scope 1 includes fuel used in stationary and mobile equipment and fleet. The most frequently proposed Scope 2 initiative category was lighting, followed by cooling equipment and controls. And the most frequently proposed Scope 1 initiative category was fleet composition, followed by compressed natural gas. The teams provided the cost of each initiative and its associated energy savings. The initiative categories were analyzed one by one for cost effectiveness. The cost effectiveness threshold was established for each initiative. The initiatives that didn't meet that threshold were set aside for possible later implementation. The graphic in front of you summarizes the emission reductions with recommended initiatives. Let's review the bar on top first. This bar represents Fluor's Scope 1 emission reductions through initiatives. As I mentioned earlier, the most frequently proposed Scope 1 initiative was replacing our fleet with electric and hybrid vehicles, followed by reduction of natural gas usage. All of the Scope 1 initiatives were analyzed for cost effectiveness, and the most cost-effective ones were recommended for implementation, which will reduce our Scope 1 emissions by 2.5%. Shown in green is the renewable energy or green gas that we are buying to address Scope 1 emissions as well. Now let's take a look at the bar below, which represents our Scope 2 emission reductions. For Scope 2, switching to LED lighting, shown in purple here, is the most cost-effective reduction category, which reduces Scope 2 emissions by 9%. Most of our offices proposed this initiative, and almost all of them were approved. Motion sensors and cooling equipment are also cost-effective categories. The solar panels category could reduce our Scope 2 emissions by 8% if all of the proposed initiatives were implemented. However, due to higher costs associated with installation of solar panels, we decided to install panels in only 2 offices for now. Implementing all the recommended Scope 2 initiatives is expected to reduce our Scope 2 emissions by 14%. The green color in this bar represents renewable energy that we are buying to address our Scope 2 emissions as well. Post-2023, after we have achieved net zero, we will consider additional initiatives for implementation. Implementing more initiatives results in lower energy use and fewer energy attributes and offsets that must be purchased to maintain net zero. We track the status of all initiatives in Power BI. The status can be tracked by categories, offices, and by business groups. As you can see on this slide in front of you, the 18 initiatives have been approved for implementation. They're shown in green, and 5 have already been implemented. They're shown in orange. And 13 initiatives are still pending approval from our senior management. Well, actually, I have an update. The 13 initiatives were actually approved for implementation earlier this week. We set our goal in the beginning of 2021 to achieve net zero by the end of 2023. The rest of 2021 was mostly dedicated to planning. We covered most of the 2021 activities earlier, and now we will concentrate on 2022 and 2023 activities. So in 2022 and 2023, we will reduce energy consumption at our offices through initiatives as described earlier. We will purchase low and zero carbon energy and energy attributes to address any remaining Scope 2 emissions. We will also purchase offsets for any remaining Scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions. We will buy sufficient amount of energy attributes and offsets to cover our emissions. If insufficient, we will buy on the spot market. If we have access, we can move them to the next year. We have developed our greenhouse gas emissions inventory management plan. We also call it IMP. That serves as the basis for Net Zero 2023 verification. Our consultant has provided input, and its certified verification service team will be verifying our attainment of Net Zero based on this document. The annual IMP will be issued at the same time as the integrated annual report. It will be the annual greenhouse gas emissions detailed report that includes subjects such as which offices are included and the emission factors we used, and so forth. Post-2023, we will continue to reduce our energy usage and purchase zero-emission energy, energy attributes, and carbon offsets. We will also consider other long-term solutions, such as power purchase agreements and virtual power purchase agreements, also known as PPAs and VPPAs. So we're going to end our talk by providing tips for planning and implementing a net zero program. First of all, just get started. It might seem like an overwhelming task, but create a plan and break it into discrete tasks. As we mentioned earlier, we can help other teams in planning and implementing a net zero program. Explain your process and plan to your stakeholders in terminology they will understand. Be transparent internally and externally. Reach out internally by starting small and engaging employees. A lot of communication goes a long way to helping employees and external stakeholders carry the message of the net zero commitment. Seek feedback from your stakeholders, especially your employees. The ideation campaign provided a significant number of ideas for consideration by our offices and engaged everyone, including individuals on construction sites. Partner with experts. In our case, we hired a consultant to demonstrate transparency and an energy advisor to assist us with global procurement of energy attributes and carbon offsets. Be willing to modify your plan. Our partners assisted us in understanding where those modifications would be most helpful. We documented those modifications so that we could examine those changes later. And finally, be the change agent. If you demonstrate the desired behavior to achieve change, you will serve as a model. Now I'll pass the session back to Brent. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy, Lucy, and Hillary. Let's take a moment to address some of the questions we've received thus far. We'll start with Nancy. Our first question, what advice would you give a company that is just getting started or is in the very early stages of sustainability planning?
Well, as Lucy mentioned, get started. Small is fine, and building from there is good. Get assistance for specific needs that you have. For example, if you plan to get verification, get the verifier on board early to make sure that you're headed in the right direction for what the verifier will need. Understand what your company and its sources of greenhouse gas emissions are. So you know that better than a consultant. So know what you've got before you just jump in and look at what other companies are doing. There's a lot out on the internet. There's a lot of reports written, a lot of webinars. So look at what else is happening out there.
All right, thank you, Nancy. The next question I'll direct to Lucy, and this is in reference to slide 27. Most of your energy reduction initiative to reach net zero 2023 is coming from renewable energy attributes and offsets. How do you plan to reduce emissions after that to lower your reliance on attributes and offsets? And ultimately, how close to net zero can Fluor get through other methods? And how much will need to come from attributes and offsets in the long term?
Yes, thank you, Brent. Obviously, we will continue to implement our the remaining energy reduction initiatives, and then we will continue holding the ideation campaign, trying to get more ideas. But then we will also consider solutions such as power purchase agreements and virtual power purchase agreements. And so with that, we'll try to reduce our reliance on EECs and carbon offsets.
Thank you, Lucy. Next question I'll direct to Nancy. Is there any positive and significant impact of home office schemes to help in these net zero efforts?
Home office being work from home?
I'm assuming that's what they mean, yeah.
Okay. Definitely it assists because the way the greenhouse gas protocol is designed, it does not take into effect work from home. So they're thinking about it, they're working on it, but right now it does not include it. And we're following the greenhouse gas protocol. So as we have a number of people working from home, our emissions as offices go down. And you'll see that if you look back at our sustainability reports, the emissions were lower in 2020 due to the start of the pandemic. So we do see an impact by that. And at this time, because of the protocol we're using, they are not included in our calculations.
Okay, thank you. I have to think also that just keeping people off the roads has a significant impact as well overall.
It did in fuel usage, and also we saw a lot of wildlife come back.
That's great. Thank you. Next question I'll direct to you again, Nancy. What exactly is meant by buy certificates to reduce emissions? What is being bought and sold? Is this what Nancy what you referred to when you said you mentioned a challenge around the perception of greenwashing?
Yes, there is the perception of some individuals that buying certificates is not helping the environment. but it is because it's actually, we are not taking the energy into Fluor, but we're buying it for other individuals elsewhere. And the key is that we're retiring it. So it can't be reused. It's taken out of the marketplace, and that's the key to using this mechanism.
All right, thank you. Next question is for Lucy, referring to slide 28. You mentioned the ideation program resulted in 300 energy reduction ideas. You showed us about 20 or so that have become initiatives that you're progressing. What is the status of the others? Will you have ongoing idea solicitation?
Yes, so the many of those ideas were behavioral ideas. So those ideas are moving forward. So the 85 initiatives were total that that kind of required some approval and budgeting. So those were the ideas that we kind of had to evaluate for cost effectiveness. And so we have selected 36 that were cost effective and that we're going to implement this year. And then the rest of the ideas, we didn't say that we're not going to implement it, but we are going to consider implementation of those ideas in the following years after 2023.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for Nancy. How do you evaluate recommendations, technologies, etc., to provide in your sustainability action screening tool?
We take all the information, the 100-ish questions, and you answer those questions, you get prioritized list of actions. Doesn't say that these will cost you the most or the least. It's prioritized based on the information that's entered. And using that information, it gives you a guide for what you can do instead of the what used to be very common, going on a site and saying, so what do we do? This guides you so that you can take all those factors and come up with a list. And each one of those sustainability actions that's prioritized for you has a great deal of information to give you more start to the process. And a key here is that it's done between the contractor and the client. The client is involved. This is not something that is done strictly by a consultant or a client, at least not to get the most benefit.
All right, and related to that and related to your response to that question, are there any schemes being implemented currently at construction sites?
Schemes. There are opportunities like microgrids that are being used on some of our projects. And those microgrids would arise from a questionnaire answer that would say you've got a remote location, for example, and getting power is difficult, and you would have to rely on a lot of generators and the air emissions that would come off those. So a microgrid would be a possible solution there.
Okay, thank you. And this question I'll direct to Lucy. Is SPIMS available on project sites?
Oh, yes, all of our projects are encouraged to use PIMS. As Nancy mentioned, our projects are not included in our Scope 1 and 2 commitment. However, this tool is available for the projects so that they can help our clients with their reporting.
Okay, great, thank you. And Lucy, another question for you. How do you balance decisions around cost and impact when you select your energy reduction initiatives to implement?
Great question, Brent. Thanks. So first of all, and I guess most importantly, we consider the grid and what emissions can be reduced for a specified cost. For example, the central US grid isn't as green as West Coast grid. So the same project and cost will achieve more reduction in central US. So those are the things we look at.
Okay, thanks. Another one that is somewhat related to the first question that was directed to you around long-term energy reduction plans. Do you have projections for the amount of offsets that you will need in the future, 2030, for example?
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell what the projection is. Obviously, we're going to try to reduce our Scope 1 emissions as much as possible through the initiatives. And yeah, it's I don't really have a projection. I don't know how much we're going to have. But like I said, we're going to try and reduce it as much as possible. And obviously, the more we can reduce, the less offsets we would need to buy.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. And the next question is for Nancy, and this refers to slide 19. Can you tell us more about the core team you've established and what kind of day-to-day activities they participate in? What kind of roles those team members play in working toward net zero?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. The disciplines were chosen so that we could have a seamless discussion. So within the group, if there was a question for IT, computers, we would know who to reach, and that individual would get the answer or tell us, here's the person who can obtain it, because sometimes it takes us a significant time just to figure out who to ask. And then these disciplines are charged with providing input into the process. As an example, an IT representative evaluates options to digitally update employees. Supply chain, they took the lead on contracting the consultant and the energy advisor. So this team worked together on all facets of the process and then implementation.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. And one more for you. You talked early on in the presentation about one of your challenges being that more documentation was required than you expected or had in the past. Can you expand on that?
Oh, absolutely. The key was verification. We had a lot of information in SPIMS, as Lucy has mentioned, and that information came from every office. Each office enters information. So they had the utility bills, for example, for electricity, and they retained those. But now we had to make those available to the verifier. So we entered those, the utility invoices are actually entered into or scanned into SPIMS. Things like EACs, the energy attributes, you have to show that they're retired. You have to show proof that you have them. And all those have to be tied to a particular office. So the amount of documentation for 104 offices expanded enormously. One, we never had to deal with energy attribute certificates or offsets before. And then all the information we had before about what renewable energy we were collecting or consuming, what utility bills we had for electricity, how we were capturing information on fuel used in fleet, that was all retained at the offices. Now we had to incorporate those into the central SPIMS for documentation by the verifier.
Okay, thank you. And Lucy, this one's for you. What topics do you plan to include in upskilling?
Yeah, so we're planning on including topics such as power purchase agreements, also energy attribute certificates, carbon offsets, green gas certificates. So the advisor is going to talk about what these are and also how we can how they can be used.
Great, thank you. And Nancy, question for you. Fluor is further ahead of other companies on the net zero journey. What drove the urgency for Fluor to target 2023 for net zero, say as opposed to 2025 or later?
What's a demonstration of our commitment, and it's tied to our company strategy. So in January of 2021, our CEO announced a number of items within our overall strategy. And as part of that, the sustainability commitment and challenge was announced. And it highlights the importance of sustainability to our overall strategy and then to each business group's strategy. So it was very key to have 2023 to match with the rest of our company strategy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lucy, on the subject of retiring EACs and offsets, I know we mentioned that it's Fluor's intention to retire them once purchased. What is the timeline for retiring those EACs and offsets?
Yes, as you mentioned, it is necessary to take them off the market so they can be used by another company. And the timeline is usually about around a year. Sometimes it can take a little bit less, and sometimes it may take a little bit longer but for the planning purpose, yeah, we would at least allow 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And for our final question that we've received, Nancy, this one's to you. What can the average employee at Fluor or any other company that's pursuing a net zero journey do to help move the company toward their goals of net zero?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. It's partly an awareness thing and a mindset. So being aware of opportunities, looking at the opportunities in the office differently. So lights being on, computers on all night, being aware of opportunities and making behavioral changes. So I've noticed that in our offices that a lot of employees have stepped up with ideas of simple behavioral changes, but those are important in order to implement something like Net Zero 2023. And it also helps to address change management. If you have employees who are engaged and they want to make these changes, they see the end result as being very relevant and pertinent to them and to the company, then they'll start looking for those opportunities. And the ideation campaign was a way 300 ideas within a couple of weeks. And those ideas were not just office personnel, they were construction personnel as well. So we got a lot of excellent ideas that way. And it just got the employees in a mindset of looking for opportunities then.
That's great. Thank you. And with that, I'd like to thank our speakers again for this very informative webinar. Thank you to the audience for attending today as well. It's been a pleasure being your moderator. Please continue to stay informed of these events by visiting the Innovation Builders page on fluor.com or following our social media channels using hashtag Innovation Builders. If you'd like us to send you email notifications of future webinars, please email us at innovation.builders@fluor.com with opt-in in the subject line. We appreciate your attention and thank you again for dialing in today. If you have any questions or require additional information, please email innovation.builders@fluor.com and someone from our team will get back to you. From all of us on the Innovation Builders team, have a safe day.